Hey everyone, welcome to week 8 of our Genesis Bible study. I am so excited. I get to sit on the other side of the table tonight, so I think this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to be hosting, I'm going to be asking you some questions, and Caleb tonight is going to be teaching through chapters, Genesis?
Yeah, so we're Genesis 42 through 45 tonight.
Through 45. So 42, 43, 44, 45. 4 chapters.
Just a small amount to cover today.
No big deal. We can do it. I think this is going to be great. And we gave it to you.
Right.
We gave you 4 chapters, which is fun. And this is your first time teaching for our Bible study.
Oh, for sure.
But
it's great.
Super confident that you're going to do an incredible job. So I'm not sure how I'm going to do as a host. No guarantees here.
You're going to be fantastic.
We're going to have so much fun. I can guarantee that. So just to do a little bit of a recap about where we've been, about where we went, like what we went through with Stephen last week. So we went through Genesis 39 through 41. We kind of picked back up with the Joseph narrative. Joseph is in Potiphar's house and then gets framed by Potiphar's wife, goes into the pit. And yeah, some really interesting things happen there with his clothing. So there's some details there that are really revealing. And then he interprets some dreams of the baker and the cupbearer, and they forget about him. Or at least the cupbearer forgets about him for 2 years. Yeah. And then he says, oh my gosh, I totally forgot about this guy who can interpret dreams when Pharaoh has a bad dream. They pull him out, shave him, give him a nice
bubble
long
bath.
shower.
Yeah, take care of him.
Give him some new clothes. And then he interprets this dream for Pharaoh and becomes this kind of ruler guy, gets completely restored, but not just restored in like a general sense, but way far beyond anything that I think we would expect.
Yeah.
It's a very Ephesians 3:20 kind of far beyond any of our expectations or imagination of what it could be. But he had these dreams when he was 17. So
it's definitely like a riches to rags to better riches story for sure.
Way better riches. Yeah. I mean, he's still experiencing this kind of this favor that seems unusual from these people who are in authority over him.
Totally.
Yeah. So, wow. So cool. And then we're jumping in to Genesis 42.
Yeah, these are some of my favorite chapters in Genesis for sure. If you grew up in the age that I did, you're kind of used to those animated movies of Joseph and the coat of many colors or Moses and Pharaoh. And so I know for me, I came back to this with a lot of familiarity, but also having to kind of wade into it and say, okay, what's really going on here that I might have missed as a 12-year-old watching an animated film? So yeah, with that recap, I think we'll go ahead and jump in. As always, we have our Zoom crew with us today.
Oh yeah, that's right.
They're going to be popping in to ask us some questions, probably make some super insightful comments.
Hey, you guys.
Maybe next week they'll be teaching because of how wise and awesome they are. But I actually want to, before we jump into chapter 42, I actually want to start at the end of Genesis 41, right where we left off.
Sounds good.
If you have your Bibles with you, if you're watching this, go ahead and grab your Bibles. We're going to be covering a lot of text today. I would love for you to follow along. So Genesis 41, verse 47, it says, when the famine was spread over all the face of the earth, then Joseph opened up all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, and the famine was severe in the land of Egypt. 57 now, the people of all the earth came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was severe in all the earth. So here's kind of the scene that we're setting off. 42 is really going to jump in to one of these people groups that come to Egypt to see Joseph and to buy grain. We have this whole rags to riches story that we just talked about. And now we're going to jump in and see, okay, what does this look like for one of these people groups? And it just so happens that this one happens to be the Abrahamic line, his family, his brothers that sold him in, right? So as we jump right back into 42, right in the story, we see when Jacob learned that there was grain for sale in Egypt, he said to his sons, why do you look at one another? So we got a couple things first. This is the first time we're seeing Jacob in a long time. We've had a lot of texts that we've gone through since then. Do you guys remember when the last time we saw Jacob was?
Yeah, wasn't he tearing his clothes and saying, I'm going to mourn forever?
Yeah, exactly. He tore his garments and he said, hey, Joseph's in the place of the dead, so that's where I'm going to go. So it appears by how quickly he's speaking to his sons that maybe his disposition hasn't really changed. Like he's probably still a little sad and mourning. And we know that this is sometime later. We just heard Joseph's pretty much most of his life narrative coming up and being this vizier in the land of Egypt. And
he seems a little surly.
Yeah.
Why do you look at one another like, are you guys going to do anything?
Yeah.
About this? Yeah.
Yeah. I think something we often forget to really settle on here is that a famine is not a food shortage. Here in the West, if we might have food shortages, when the pandemic hit, everyone went and there were certain things like toilet paper and some food that they just couldn't find, but we had food to get by. In a lot of ways, at this point, before they had a lot of preservation tactics for food, they were probably scavenging at this point. There's the whole clan of Israel, of Jacob and his family. They were probably scavenging for food. And if they didn't find food, it didn't just mean empty stomachs. It meant death to their line. And so when Jacob looks at his son and says, I've heard that there's grain for sale in Egypt. Why do you look at one another? Basically, why aren't you going to do this? What we're faced with here is not necessarily just a struggle, but a life and death situation. Not only do we see Jacob's heart from the last time we saw him, his heart is almost dead. His soul seems to be in this really weak, damaged, battered place. But now also his family line has that same potential. It's imminent death right here, right in the beginning of 42. One other thing that we see is this comment of, why do you look at one another? I think it's pretty, he mentions Egypt, and all the brothers probably, they look around and they're saying, oh, Egypt, huh? And Jacob notices that something's going on here. Like, why are you guys looking around at each other? Their hair on the back of their necks probably standing up. It's funny. This has been 20 years, and just the mention of Egypt, the place where they sold Joseph, causes this guilt to be brought back to their mind. When we compare it with kind of Joseph, last week we saw that he named one of his sons Manasseh. Ephraim and Manasseh, he named them, and one of them means my present joy makes me forget my past struggles and past pain. So we see these two approaches. Are we going to put this behind us, try to move on, or is the guilt just going to ride our conscience and our mind? Cool. Well, now that we've spent 10 minutes on one verse, let's go ahead and keep going forward. So verse 2 says, and behold, I have heard that there is grain for sale in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die. This right here is actually going to be the main theme of these whole passages, that we may live and not die. I want you guys to look out for that. Whenever you see it in your text, go ahead and underline it and highlight it. This is something that's not just going to occur with these very words, but it's going to occur throughout the whole of the Pentateuch in this story. Because like we know, life and death in this situation is not just the death of one family, but this is the Abrahamic family. This is the covenant line. If you've been following along with us, we know that from the beginning, we're looking for the snake-crushing seed. Who is going to come here and who is going to defeat death and restore us back to the Garden of Eden, that perfect unity with Christ, perfect unity with God? We know that that's coming from this family. But what happens if they die? So for the whole, not only for the story, but for the biblical narrative, the tension's on, the pressure's here. Let's see what happens. So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with his brothers, for he feared that harm might happen to him. Thus the sons of Israel came to buy among the others who came, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. Did you guys notice the switch between talking about Jacob and talking about Israel? Did you guys notice how they kind of switch names a little bit there? Do you guys have any idea what that's about?
Please tell us.
So I think it's interesting. We know there's this kind of these two names for the same person. Not only is Genesis this chapter, not only is it set in the context of the book of Genesis, but it also is being written to the people of Israel as they leave Egypt. And we've talked about these key questions as who is this God and can we trust him? Well, we know that Israel and the children of Israel, they're God's people. And so when we see this name change to Israel, what the author is wanting us to see is, hey, there's a little more at stake here than just Jacob in the specific text. What we're looking at is actually the future lineage and the family of God here. It carries a little more importance than just isolated to this scripture. It's throughout the Bible. It's throughout the text. So keep an eye out for that. If you see that, it's the author inviting you to take a step back from the text and say, okay, in the theme of what we've seen through Genesis so far, why might this be important? Why might it be important that the sons of Israel are coming down with others to buy some food during the famine? We also get this little comment about Benjamin here. We see that Jacob didn't want to send Benjamin. He was kind of fearful. Mm-hmm. This could be for a number of reasons. Do you guys have any guesses why he might be fearful?
I mean, he's got 2 sons from Rachel.
Right.
One's gone. So he's like, I'm going to keep you close.
Yeah, it's like a protective.
Yeah, totally.
Move.
Yeah. I mean, I would feel the same. Yeah, I would hold him close for sure.
Yeah, do you think he was suspicious at all that maybe the brothers had something more to play in the missing or in the possible death of Joseph?
That's a good question. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think he could have been suspicious at all, or?
I just think he may have not trusted them. Like, I'm not putting him in your hands again, this precious person.
Yeah.
I don't know if I necessarily read like suspicion that they had something to do with it, more just like, nope, he's not leaving my sight with you guys.
Yeah.
Up to this point, are Jacob's 10 sons, are they good guys or bad guys?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, yes is a great answer.
Yes, they are guys.
They are guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we've also seen, them go and basically pillage a whole city.
I know.
We've seen them, we've seen Reuben try to supersede his father and actually lay with his father's wife. Mm-hmm. We've seen some stuff that's kind of messy, and that's not the best. And so these brothers are carrying a little bit of maybe a chip on their shoulder. They might not have the best rapport with Jacob so far, so there's probably some reasonable suspicion there. And we're going to see this reasonable suspicion come into play. As we move on and go to verse 6, it's going to say, now Joseph was the governor over the land. He was the one who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and they bowed themselves before him with their faces to the ground.
There you go.
We did it, right? Everything
First
that was
dream.
Yeah, checked off the box.
Yeah.
There's the first dream, right? Mm-hmm. The brothers bowing down. And what's even better is it's for grain. Like that's the dream right there, right? Mm-hmm. That Joseph would be in this position of power and his brothers would fall on their face for food. Mm-hmm. I think what's really cool is that we saw the brothers respond to this dream by basically making accusations. If you think you're going to rule over us, interpreting it as some kind of power play. But in reality, what they're doing here is Joseph is going to provide for them. And we'll find out later that God sent Joseph ahead to provide for them. Mm-hmm. So what they interpreted as a power play or some kind of domination is actually the Lord's hesed, his steadfast faithfulness in these brothers' lives, in this family of Israel. I
mean, I think Joseph could have initially interpreted it as authority or power play. Like, he wasn't completely... I just think... if you don't have it explicitly said to you, then you might have visions of grandeur in your head if you had a dream like that. So I think everyone could have potentially had their idea of what it was, and then God's idea is always, it's always so much better. So.
But that's a very human thing. I know a lot of us, we felt maybe, I think this might be God, right? This thought or this dream.
Yeah.
And then we've taken that and we said, well, then this is exactly what it means.
Totally.
And years later we find out it's like, well, maybe it's close, but it's a little bit in this direction. So I definitely see that as a possibility. And as we go through this text, we're going to see even more. Was he right in his interpretation? Or did God maybe have more at stake for this?
Yeah.
We know that Joseph saw his brothers and he recognized them. But the text says he treated them like strangers and spoke roughly to them. That just means he intentionally disguised himself, and he spoke in very quick, straightforward ways to kind of not give too much away. He said, "Where do you come from?" They said, "The land of Canaan. We came to buy food." Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. His disguise was a success. He did it. They're not going to know it's Joseph. And then in verse 9, we get this comment, and Joseph remembered the dream that he had dreamed of them. Can you imagine what a great moment this might be for Joseph? Right? We see that with his son, he tried to put all of this behind him. He was thrown into a pit, left for dead, sold into slavery. The Lord Yahweh was with him. He rose up to be the head of Potiphar's household. He was again thrown down low into a pit. He was again raised up, right? All these years have passed. He's tried to kind of put it behind him. And then in this moment, as the brothers are bowing before him, Joseph remembers the dream and it clicks.
Mm-hmm.
It's here. I wasn't crazy. I did hear God. I did see God in that dream.
Caleb, do you think he had confidence after interpreting the other two prisoners' dream that, like, do you think there was a confidence that he knew this was going to happen eventually?
That's a great question. I definitely think he had confidence in his dream interpreting ability. I don't know if he knew that this was going to happen. I think the way the text reads when it says Joseph remembered, that word there seems to be kind of like a sudden revelation, right? Not just like, oh, I recalled the thing I was thinking about last week. It's this brought back to mind that wasn't there. So I think what this is kind of saying is like, he was like, oh my gosh, I forgot about that in some ways. Or I'd maybe try to put that behind me. I don't think he was surprised. I don't think he had counted this dream as lost. But I don't think it was kind of current. I don't think he was thinking about it every day of like, okay, anytime now, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
And then we see, a classic response. These brothers are before you. This God dream is fulfilled. Joseph says, I was right. You were wrong. Here, look at this fulfillment of the dream. No, instead he says, you are spies. You have come to see the nakedness or the weakness of the land. If we have any Hebrew scholars in here, you'll know that this word nakedness, that was the same word that was used in Genesis 9 when Ham saw, and the father of Canaan saw the nakedness of his father, this manipulatory act, this wicked, this vulnerable moment. And so what he's claiming is, hey, you guys have come to scout and find our weaknesses. You guys have come to find the weaknesses of our city and take it over. Have the brothers done something like that before?
Totally.
Have they taken a city when it was weak and from a weak spot?
Yeah.
Yeah, we see this with the city of Shechem. And so Joseph doesn't know this claim, but us as a reader, we know, okay, maybe there's a little more weight to this accusation than we might think. He continues on, and Joseph, or the brothers of Joseph, they basically respond to this as, we've come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We are honest men. Your servants have never been spies. Here we have three statements. This first one, we are all sons of one man. I think what's funny is that's probably even more true than they realized. Yeah, because not only were the 10 brothers that came from Canaan sons of one man, but Joseph.
Yeah.
So all 11 of them, this statement fits.
Yeah.
We are honest men. Now, is this one true?
Nope.
No? Why not?
Liars. I mean, they obviously, they allowed their father to believe that Joseph was eaten and torn apart by a wild animal. So yeah, they're all liars. I mean, and even if you think about Shechem, they're like, yeah, you can totally marry our sister and just circumcise yourselves. And then they wipe them out. I mean, they have a history of dishonesty.
Yeah. And even with Joseph, right? Genesis 37:18 says, they saw him from afar, and before he came near, they conspired against him to kill him.
Yeah.
So we see Joseph's hearing these things, and he's the first one. I almost view him chuckling to himself like, oh, more than you know.
Yeah.
The second one, he says, no, I don't believe you at all. I know this to be untrue. And then this third one is, your servants have never been spies. Well, this one, we don't necessarily know if it's truthful, but the idea around spies is this deceitfulness or this idea of trying to take advantage of the situation. And what we're actually about to see through the test of Joseph is an opportunity for them to either try to take advantage of a situation and the weaknesses of it, or for them to act differently. And so this one, I'm going to say, is what we're going to find out today. Are they spies? Are they trying to manipulate the system towards their own advantage? We continue on reading in verse 12. Joseph doubles down. He says, nope, it's the weakness of the land that you've come to see. They said, we're your servants, we're 12 brothers, the son of one man in the land of Canaan, and behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is no more. So this is probably news to Joseph. He's like, wait, there's another kid? There's another youngest? Oh, How much that's so joyful, that's so happy. This phrase in one is no more, we often like to read it as this ominous, and there one is no more, they must be dead. But this phrase is pretty much just a vague term. It doesn't necessarily imply death. Enoch in Genesis 5, he was no more when God took him and he did not see death. Later in the story, Simeon will also be no more. It's an understanding that they're kind of being intentionally vague with what they're doing here. So Joseph says, okay, let's throw down the gauntlet. Joseph has some reason for testing his brothers that we do not know yet, but he gives them this test. It's a test of life and death. Verse 14, he says, as I said to you, you are spies. By this you shall be tested. I swear by Pharaoh, you shall not go from this place, and yes, your youngest brother comes to me. Send one of you and let him bring your brother while you remain confined, that your words may be tested, whether there is truth in you. Or else, I swear by Pharaoh, surely you are spies. And he put them all in custody together for 3 days. On the third day, Joseph said, do this and you will live. Here we see it. Do you guys see that? The you will live, that start of our key phrase? Cool. So everything bracketed between this and the ending is going to be our test for today. For I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers remain confined where you are in custody, and let the rest go and carry grain for the famine of your household. And bring your youngest brother to me, so your words will be verified, and you shall not die. And they did so. So here we have our test. Bring your brother here. Let me know that you're honest. Bring the grain back to your family. And I'll know that you're good. That's it. You guys won't die if this happens. Seems like a fairly easy test, right?
Yeah.
Basically just...
Well, and they have to leave one of their brothers behind.
Yeah.
And then, so they have to leave a brother behind and then bring a brother back.
Yeah.
To do old switcheroo. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, we're keeping a brother as leverage, right?
Yeah.
Making sure that we don't just take the food and run, right? Take the money and run. Mm-hmm. So it seems like a pretty fair thing. I think this wouldn't be too uncommon back then. Oftentimes, whenever you are rationing out food, specifically in a famine, you would give portions based on the household. So if they're coming and they're claiming, actually, we have 2 more siblings that aren't here, they're trying to get not just 2 people's allocation of food, but they're trying to get 2 families' allocation of food. Because those brothers would each, the implicit understanding, they would each have households underneath them. Mm. So what they're saying is, we need a lot more food than you actually see present here. Mm. So, you can interpret this on a surface level as Joseph's just wanting to verify, hey, we're actually giving them the right amount of grain. It does seem a little bit weird, right? We don't see this happening with other families, all of the other earth that's coming to get it, but this is probably why you don't see any objections of suspicion from the brothers of like, this is outrageous. Why don't you do this, right? Also that and the fact that Joseph had the military might and he was the one holding the food in Egypt. So that's probably another correct.
It's life and death on the line.
It's life and death on the line.
Yeah.
So the brothers respond and they say, in truth, we are guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the distress of his soul when he begged us and we did not listen. That is why this distress has come upon us, because we didn't listen. And Reuben, the oldest brother, answers, did not I tell you not to sin against the boy? But you did not listen. So now there comes a reckoning for his blood. What did you guys think about this? The statement, like what's the accusation and what's the test? And how are the brothers responding?
I kind of view it as sin sticks with us. And as humans, we kind of tend to, if something bad happens to us, we recall, oh, I did this one thing. This is why it's happening. We try to put a face to a name, if you will.
Yeah, I think this just screams guilty conscience. I don't know if you guys have ever, I'm sure everybody is completely perfect. But for me, in high school, I cheated on a math quiz. Yeah, I know, I'm a bad boy. But that whole day, every time somebody like my teacher or somebody in the hall I saw, they said my name, I tensed up and I was like, this is it. This is the reckoning. I knew it. They've caught me. I've been found out. Those hidden cameras in the ceiling, there weren't hammers. They found me out, right? I remember I'd finished the quiz and my teacher said, hey, Caleb, can you come up here for a second? And then just this wave came over my body. I'm like,
yeah.
The principal's
in
office.
A cold sweat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she just needed my help, like wiping off the whiteboard. But it's funny, when you carry guilt on you, when you carry guilt with you, mm-hmm. everything that happens, you interpret as relating to that. Mm-hmm. Everything that happens, you do. And we're going to see that slowly build throughout this narrative. But I think that's just true to reality. what the accusation was, hey, I'm not sure, you guys are spies, I'm not sure if you actually have another brother, they interpreted it as, it's because we did something to Joseph that this is happening. I think it's funny, they're also interpreting this as some kind of divine reckoning or cosmic karma. They're basically saying God has done this to us. We're actually going to see them say that in a little bit, that God has caused this to befall on us. Mm-hmm. Is this the character of Yahweh? Do we see Yahweh behave in this way? Do the brothers know the character of Yahweh? I think there's a questions to think through. What has Jacob been doing all of these years? What has he been raising them up and training them in? Mm-hmm. Has Jacob, I can imagine Jacob kind of sitting there in his mourning, his season of mourning lasting so long, his soul, his heart numb, and his brothers being raised up and unguarded in the truth of who their covenant God is. Mm-hmm. So we know that Simeon gets taken. There could be a lot of reasons for this. It could be that they needed the oldest brother to be able to speak on behalf of the family. Or it could be something maybe more significant. Maybe in the eyes of the brothers, Reuben has discredited himself. We know that he laid with Bilhah in chapter 35 and almost said, hey, I'm going to start my own family. I'm going to try to be the patriarch. So maybe this could be some sort of consensus of you're not really one of us, so we can kind of leave you behind. But we don't really know. But we know that for some reason, Simeon is the one that stays behind and not Reuben. Do you have a comment on that?
Nope.
No? Cool.
I don't.
So we know that Joseph fills the sacks, and what he does is he replaces the money. So they've given him the money, he puts it back in there, and loads their donkeys and gets on their way. I find it funny that Joseph basically gives them back the silver that they had given to him for the grain. I think in a way, this isn't canon, this is just my thing, almost in a way of like, keep your blood money. I don't want the money used to sell. We're going to put it back. And then we know that we have this event where it says one of them opened their sacks and they saw the money was still there. And they cried, what is this that God has done to them? What is this that God has done to me? Mm-hmm. Right? Here again, right? Money's in the sacks. God's punishing me. That's what we're doing. So they come back to Jacob. They tell their father. They tell him all about the encounter they have. And in verse 30, we see this first phrase, the man, the Lord of the land, spoke roughly to us and took us to be spies of the land. Nowhere in this encounter and in the ones to follow do the brothers reference Joseph as the visor of Pharaoh.
Yeah, by an official title.
Yeah.
They just call him the man.
Yeah.
He's the man.
He's the man. He's the man, right?
Yeah. He's
but
totally the man.
If you've kind of been following along, one thing that we've seen is that all throughout, starting in Genesis 2 with Adam, 2, there we go. We've seen this term, the man, as people who are partnering with God in some way. So we see Adam, he is the man, right?
Adam literally means
the man.
The man.
Right.
Yeah. And then there's the other word for Hebrew word.
Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah. So we have the man partnering with God, right? We've also seen these mystery characters throughout our story so far. The man who wrestles with God, right? Do you guys remember that with Jacob? Or Jacob wrestles with the man, sorry. We don't know what this is. We had a conversation of, is this a spiritual being? Is this an angel? Is this God?
Yeah.
We don't know.
All of these representatives have this kind of ambiguous identity.
Yeah. They carry with them some kind of atmosphere of godness, but we don't know if it's, God, a being, just kind of someone who is a follower of Yahweh, like Melchizedek, right? A fearer of Yahweh. We don't know. We see this also in the Joseph narrative, right? When he goes to find his brothers, they're not where they're supposed to be. And this mysterious man knows exactly who Joseph is, knows exactly who his brothers are, and exactly where they went, right? This knowledge that he doesn't really have. So all this to say, this term, the man, carries with it a little bit of weight in the text. It typically is somebody who is sent by, related, or and a servant or an agent of God. Right? The angels at Sodom and Gomorrah, they were the men. Bring the men out to us. So keep that in mind. I'm by no means claiming that Joseph is an angel or a spiritual being, but I think this carries some significance to the text that the brothers might be viewing him as this, God-related thing, God-related entity, full of power. And we're going to see him actually be that, not to show the cards too much. So we see the brothers relaying the story back to Jacob, relaying everything we just saw. In 34, it says, "Bring your youngest brother to me. Then I shall know that you are not spies, but honest men, and I will deliver your brother to you, and you shall trade in the land." Well, this is probably going to be the hardest thing for Jacob to do, right? Give Benjamin. We know earlier that he feared giving Benjamin, like sending Benjamin with them. There was some fear there for his safety. I think just kind of a little play on words is, it says, deliver your brother, or then I shall know that you're not spies in this land, and I will deliver your brother to you. Which brother are we going to see delivered? Which brother is going to be brought back into the family? A little foreshadowing, maybe? I don't know.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah.
Yeah. So we continue on. Jacob responds to this. They said, "Hey, give us Benjamin so we can get food." He says, "You have bereaved me, or you have made me childless. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more." Here we see this "no more" phrase. "And now you want to take Benjamin too? Do you want to take 3 of my children?" And Reuben, as the eldest, he steps up and he says to his father, "You know what? Kill my 2 sons if I do not bring Simeon and Benjamin back to you. Put him in my hands, and I will bring him back to you." But Jacob says, "My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is the only one left. If harm should happen to him on his journey that you are to make, you would bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the place of the dead." Here we see one of the key tensions in this text. Can the sons of Leah be trusted again with the younger, favored son of Rachel, the one whom Jacob loves? Will Jacob relinquish this favored child, this replacement favored son, so that the family may live and not die?
Yeah. So as we're going into chapter 43, how much time passes between, because it looks like he finally says, "Go again and like get us some food."
Right. So we know that it's been at around 2 years, right? Because the famine is going to last for 7 years.
Okay.
And we know basically there's a verse later that tells us how long it had been. So it'd been about 2 years, could be a little bit less, but no more than that.
So that means that Simeon has been hanging out in Egypt for the last
jail,
2 years.
In prison.
And Jacob is kind of dragging his feet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're gonna see that he's really dragging his feet and that he's very apprehensive to this. He almost kind of throws under the rug the fact that, to get the food, to get the life, they have to bring the life back to the family, they have to send the younger favored son. So we're going to see that here in a second. One thing I do want to bring up that I thought was really interesting, when you look at Reuben's, basically his argument for put Benjamin in my hands, his argument is, if I fail, kill my 2 sons. Basically saying, we've bereaved you, bereave me if I fail.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. One thing that's really interesting is Genesis 46 tells us that Reuben actually had 4 sons, Hanok, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. Now, this could be seen as maybe him saying, let's do a 2-for-2 trade, right? If I fail.
Yeah.
I've lost 2 of your sons on my watch. You can take 2 of mine. But in this, who's getting punished? If Reuben fails, who's going to see the punishment of that? Is it going to be Reuben? Is it going to be his sons? Yeah, Reuben will take a hit to his lineage, right? Sons are important in this day and age. But the children are the one that are going to suffer the punishment. I think it's interesting that verse 37 is the final time that we see Reuben taking a position of leadership amongst the children of Israel. So if he's not taking it, someone else has to. We're going to jump into 43. It says that when they had eaten all the grain that they had brought from Egypt, about 2 years, the father said, go again and buy us a little food. And now Judah steps up. Interesting. Judah, we've seen a little bit of a history with, right? We had that little breakaway story of Judah and Tamar, where Judah didn't really seem to take responsibility until the end. Maybe this time he's going to play a little differently. We see the man solemnly warned us, saying, and he gives this same kind of thing, right? You're not going to see my face unless Benjamin comes. Israel said, verse 6, Israel said, right? Here we have this national identity. Why did you treat me so badly to tell the man that you had another brother?
I'm so irritated at him.
Yeah. Does he seem like a faith-filled individual?
I mean, no, but okay, so they wait, they eat all the grain. Yeah. I mean, he's just, And then he says, okay, go again, buy us a little food. Doesn't bring up the son thing.
Right.
And then Judah has to bring it up. And then he throws a little pity party. I don't know. It's frustrating to me.
And it was just this idea of, here's what I want, but I'm not willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
I'm not willing. Here's what it takes to get what I want, and this is not something I want.
Totally.
And so we're kind of seeing Jacob do that, right? He knows the stakes of this deal, and he's almost intentionally leaving it out to not have to deal with that, right? So we get this thing. They said, the man questioned us carefully for ourselves in a kindred, saying, is your father alive? Do you have another brother? We don't know if this happened. The text we don't get to see this part of the narrative, right? Whenever our story or our interaction with Joseph, we don't get that dialogue. But that doesn't mean that it didn't happen, right? There's a chance, like I said, with the portion sizing, that this could be some common questions that they would ask. I think what's really interesting is that we're going to see Joseph's question, his key question he's going to ask is your father alive? How's your father doing, right? Kind of giving us a little play of maybe Joseph is a little more invested and involved than they know. We'll keep going to verse 8. And Judah said to Israel, his father, here we have Judah's plea. Send the boy with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and you and also our little ones. Verse 9, I will be a pledge of his safety. Have we seen Judah give a pledge before? Judah gave a pledge back with Judah and Tamar. He said, here's my signet, my cord.
That is true.
Here's my social security card. Here's my ID. This is my identity. And I'm giving it to you as leverage for this transaction, right? This time the transaction is the life of their family. From my hand you shall acquire it from me. If I do not bring him back to life and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. And we get the sassy comment in verse 10. If we hadn't delayed, we would have been there and back by now. We would have returned twice. I think what's interesting is Judah is staking everything on the line here. This pledge, this plea he's making is not just, hey, if I fail, look badly on me for the rest of our life. If I fail, you don't have to forgive me, hold this over. He's staking his identity in the family. He's staking almost his position of inheritance. Basically, if I fail, remove me from this family. This is it. As he's doubling down, he's pushing all his chips in the middle. This is his final hand, right? We mirror this when we look at Reuben's plea. Kill my two sons if I do not bring him back to you. Again, Reuben offers this equal trade where the punishment's really these kids will perish. In Judah's situation, who receives the punishment? Who is affected? Mostly Judah. I think we see a big character progression, a big maturity moment here, right? Who is finally taking responsibility for his actions? It's Judah. We see that Israel, their father Israel, right? He relents. He says, okay, if it must be so, if you have to do it, do it. Here's a gift, right? We're going to make a gift for him. We're going to have some fruits. We're going to have a little balm, some honey, right? This composition. And the last thing he says in 13 is take also your brother. I think it's interesting when you look at this list of stuff in the gift, that this is the same stuff that the caravan that Joseph was sold to, this is the same stuff they'd be carrying to Egypt. So what you have here is basically the brothers bringing to Joseph a gift the same way that he was brought to the Egyptians.
Yeah.
It's a little ironic.
I mean, yeah, he is saying take them some stuff that he knows that they would like.
Yeah.
So, and to his credit, Jacob knows how to give a gift.
Yeah.
Because that's how he went back to Esau. He's
gosh,
like,
yeah.
I know that this works. Like take some
I know
stuff
how to butter
with
some
you.
people up.
I know
sure.
how to butter the, And then, the brother is in there too.
Yeah.
So
he saves the most painful gift for last. Benjamin, it's settled. Benjamin's going to go down to Egypt. So we see they took the presents and they were still fearful. They were still fearful when they came back, right? Last time they saw Joseph, his claims were that you were a spy, that you're deceiving me, you've came to see the weakness. But no more are there any accusations of spycraft in this story. This like accusation of, hey, you guys are spies, never comes up once more in the story. But the question still persists. Are the brothers going to take matters in their own hands and be manipulative?
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to be deceitful? Are they going to figure things out their own way? 18, we see that they were afraid, and they were afraid because the money that was replaced in their sacks. They thought people were going to fall upon them, take them captive. In 19, that we see the steward of Joseph, the messenger, or the steward of the man, come up and spoke with them and said, "Oh Lord, oh my Lord, we came down," or the brothers said, that we came down to buy food, and we came to a lodging place. We opened our sacks, and the money was here, right? Basically, they're scrambling to say that we didn't do this, I promise. We're trying to make it right. And in 23, you have the messenger of the man reply with this phrase we've seen before: "Peace to you, do not be afraid."
Who said that before?
That sounds really familiar. Where have you heard that kind of language before?
I mean, honestly, you hear it when God shows up, or when an angel shows up, or a messenger shows up, and they say, "Hey, everything is okay. Don't be afraid." That's essentially because when you encounter something like that is divine, it's terrifying. And you need somebody to say, "Hey, everything is okay. Don't be afraid."
Totally.
Yeah.
What we have here is the brothers are scared. They're in the middle of a test from this divine representative.
Yeah.
The brothers are fearful, and we have a message from this divine representative that says, "Peace to you. Do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has put treasure in your sacks for you. I've received your money."
Wow.
So we know, obviously, wow, this is great news, right? We know how awesome that is. The brothers, they're still freaking out. They don't know how this happened, right? We have two options, either from the brothers' perspective, or we have two options. Was the steward in on the plan? Or did he actually receive the money from some anonymous benefactor that sought to, in essence, buy Simeon to protect him from the land of Egypt? Buy his freedom? I don't know.
I don't know.
But what we do know is that the steward of the man is coming to bring peace and coming to try to tell them, "Hey, open your eyes, right?
Well,
There's more going on."
You could see it as them coming back. If they're coming back at all, of course they're coming back for the food, but they're also coming back for Simeon. And they're not sacrificing him to Egypt like they were willing to sacrifice or to throw Joseph in a pit.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
So that's a big deal.
So first we see there is some loyalty there, at least among the brothers of Leah. We're about to see the question of, is there loyalty to the favored younger son of Rachel? Or is that jealousy going to be...
Is it going to come up again?
Be aroused again? Yeah. So we are continuing on in verse 26. So Joseph came home. They brought him to his house. His first question he asked is your father well? And he goes, the old man whom you spoke of, is he alive? Almost trying to kind of shield back, right? With eagerness, he said, "Is your father well?" Actually, let me have a little softer language. Let me not reveal that this is my main focus. They said, "Yes, your servant, our father, he's alive, he's well." They bowed their heads and prostrated themselves before him. Again, bowing down, right? They asked earlier, "Are you really think you're going to rule over us?" Well, here we see it, right? Joseph, he lifted his eyes and he saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son. He said, "Is this your youngest brother of whom you spoke to me? God be gracious to you, my son." And then Joseph, just full of emotion, he hurried away. His compassion grew warm for his brother, and he sought a place to weep. This is the second time we've seen Joseph basically say, "Hey, I need a minute," and just be overwhelmed with compassion and emotion and weeping. I think both these times give us a little bit of insight into, hey, what is Joseph's motives in these tests? Is it vengeful?
Totally.
Is it aggressive? Or maybe there's something else going on here? To Noah's question, does Joseph know that maybe the dreams that he had earlier, does he know that, hey, maybe now's kind of the time where we might see something happen here? Continuing on, Joseph, he entered his chamber and he wept there. He washed his face and he said, "Hey, we're going to have this banquet." In verse 33, it says, "And they sat before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth." When you look directly at the Hebrew, basically it says that Joseph himself sat them according to their firstborn order. So what this is Joseph saying, "Hey, I know your guys' I know the order of you guys. I know things." Yeah. One Jewish commentary actually says that he used his silver goblet to act like he was divining this information. right? We're going to see the silver goblet come to play here in a little bit. So this might be giving the brothers a little bit of insight to there's something here, right? Maybe this the man, this divine agent of some sort, is actually some kind of divine agent. We see in 34 that portions were taken from Joseph's table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as theirs. And they drank and they were merry with him. So we see the brothers, they have a little bit of alcohol in them, maybe getting, a little bit tipsy. And Benjamin is being overflowed with favor. The youngest favored son of Rachel is being shown more.
If you think about it, there's this, they drank and they were merry with him, with Benjamin.
Yeah.
And before, they couldn't even speak peace to Joseph. They throw him in a pit and then they eat a meal. And so now this youngest son is being shown favor and they're still eating with him. Like they're okay.
And they're having a good time.
Yeah. I mean, this is good news.
Yeah. Has their heart changed? Have they grown? Have they matured? That's part of the question we're looking at today. And I think this is a sign that, hey, this is good. Track. Yeah, this is encouraging, right? For Joseph's perspective, it's been 20 years. Have they changed? And this is good. Yeah. This is hopeful. Now we're going to press on to 44. We're going to start in 44. It says, he commanded the steward of the house. This is Joseph. Joseph commanded the steward, hey, they're going to head back to their house, fill their sacks with food as much as they can carry. And again, we're going to put the money back in the sacks. But this time there's a twist. Put my cup, the silver cup, right? This word silver is kasef in Hebrew. It is used interchangeably for silver, the material, and money. Joseph was sold for 20 pieces of kasef, right? So put this in the sack of the youngest. Put this in Benjamin's sack with this grain, right? We're going to see that come to play here. We see that as soon as the morning was light, the men were sent with their donkeys. And after they had let him get a little bit of a head start, Joseph said to his steward, hey, go follow after these men. And when you overtake them, say, why have you repaid evil for good? Is it not from this that my Lord drinks, and by this that he practices divination? You've done evil in doing this. So, John Salhammer, he tells us that Joseph's words here, he's expressed the central question of the Joseph narrative. It's this contrast between evil done by the brothers and the good intended and accomplished by God. So why have you repaid the goodness of God with the evil of your actions? That's what we're seeing during this whole narrative. And we're hoping that the end of it will have a little bit of reconciliation to where the evil done by the brothers is nothing in contrast to the good seen and done by God. I think the question of why have you repaid evil for good is more than just about what we're about to see here with the cup and the money in the sacks. I think from Joseph's perspective and talking about this residue of guilt that is still on the brothers, I think for them it's going to be a question of, hey, look at your life. Why have you repaid all of the good, the hesed, the steadfast faithfulness of Yahweh? Why have you repaid this with evil? It's going to cause them to think and maybe get us to a moment of repentance and reconciliation. So we see that. They overtook them and they said to the steward, the brother said to the steward, why does my Lord speak such words as these? Far be it from your servants to do such a thing. Behold, the money that we found in the mouth of the sacks we brought back to you from the land of Canaan. How then could we steal silver or gold from your Lord's house? Verse 9, whichever of your servants is found with it shall die, and we will also be my Lord's servants. Okay, I know we've all slept since then, but does this remind you of any story that we've gone through so far? They overtook him, and their reply is, hey, we're not guilty of this, and whoever you find the contraband with, they're the guilty party. Does that remind you guys of anything?
Jacob and Rachel when they fled Laban.
Yeah, tell me, say more about that, Tricia.
Rachel took the household idols and then she hid them and sat on them, and he didn't find them, but they. That sounds like the same story.
Exactly. Yeah, this is a callback to that event. And Jacob's cry was, hey, whoever you find these idols with, let them be put to death. This time, the statement is, whichever of your servants is found with it shall die, and we will also be your Lord's servants. So very, very similar ideal here. Very similar ideal. We're almost taking some of that story and we're mapping it in here right? We're going to see what happens. The servant says, okay, let it be as you say. He who the cup is found with, they shall be my servants, and the rest of you shall be innocent.
So they said, we'll be your servants. That one will die, the one who stole.
Yeah.
And the steward says, let it be as you have said. This one will be the servant, and you all will be innocent.
Mhm.
That's different than
Yeah.
what they said.
Yeah, that's a different language. So they do this, they lower their sacks, they starting from eldest and they end with youngest. And the cup was found with Benjamin, right? This innocent brother. And how do the brothers respond? It says they tore their clothes, right? Last time we saw this, who tore their clothes in response to basically the youngest brother being perceived as dead, or his death is imminent.
Yeah.
It's Jacob,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we see the brothers are now responding a lot like Jacob responded. Interesting.
As good as dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's as good as dead.
I mean, and if they go back without him, it's bad news. Bad news.
Yeah,
for
we
all
have
of them.
multiple layers of this that we shall live
Yeah.
and not die thing.
Yep.
We have Judah saying, hey, I'm willing to suffer this familial death, this relational death, being separated from the family, if I don't bring them back. But additionally, right, the fact that this was found in Benjamin's sack could mean that the whole family does not get food anymore.
Yikes.
And the family of Israel, the chosen line, the Abrahamic covenant, could be gone.
Hey, Caleb, do you think that Joseph was intentionally putting his brothers back 20 years ago
Oh,
Yes.
and basically doing the same thing where they were at, the feelings they were feeling, and putting them in that situation?
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
mhm.
100%. We'll get there in a little bit, but when we talk about the purpose of the tests, right? We know that this wasn't a vengeful action. We know that these tests weren't for the purpose of getting back at their brothers. So I think you're hitting right on one of the key nuggets that we can pull out of this text. So very insightful. We will get to that here in a second. So Joseph says to them, he says, what deed is this that you have done? Do you not know that a man like me can indeed practice divination? He's basically saying, hey, did you really think you were going to get away with this? I can see the future. I can see guilty parties. Divination was also used to see not just future events, but who the guilty party in a situation that nobody saw was. This has a double meaning, right? He's for the brothers with this residue of guilt. He's not just saying who had the cup, but this visor of Pharaoh is saying, I know who's guilty. I know what you've done in your life. I know what you're guilty of. John Levinson, a Jewish scholar, he says the aim of divination was to determine the future, or to locate the source of trouble, or to appropriate blame or credits on events past or future. So here Joseph's making a claim of I know all of your dirty laundry. I know the skeletons in your closet, right? Specifically talking about this instance, but with the residue of guilt. I'm talking about it all. And here we say Judah steps up. He says he's despondent, right? Much like his dad. What shall we say? What shall we speak? How can we clear ourselves? God has found out the guilt of our servants. Behold, we are your Lord's servants, both we and he also in whose hand the cup was found. Were the brothers guilty of stealing the cup?
No,
Then why is Judah responding this way?
because they are guilty.
Because they are guilty.
Yeah.
So this residue of guilt, remember, we've seen that they're attributing these tests that they view as vengeful, that they view as evil. They're attributing them to God.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're seeing this really isn't about the money or the cup. But God's doing this to punish us because we are guilty. We are guilty of what we've done to Joseph and many more. John Levinson also says, he says, why it looked as if Joseph was working on a slow revenge upon his brothers. We can now start to see that his purpose was not revenge, but repentance. Through Joseph's schemes, his brothers were coming to an awareness of their guilt and were now ready to acknowledge it. Verse 17 says, far be it from me that I should do so. Only the man in whose hand the cup was found shall be my servant. As for you, go up in peace to your father. And we get this phrase, then Judah went up to him and said. This phrase went up is Hebrew, I'm going to butcher this. It's vayagash. It's translated, I'm going to assume I killed that.
I'm going to pretend like you did an awesome job.
That's exactly. Yeah.
That was so good.
But that is translated as went up. That has also been translated as came near. We saw that in Abraham's bold intercession for Sodom and Gomorrah, where he interceded, right? He turned the person he was talking to from judgment to mercy, right? Not because their heart was set on judgment, but because they knew the righteous character. I think that's really interesting. So what we're seeing here when it says Judah went up is not just a transition to a phrase. This is a defining moment for Judah. This is Judah boldly, like Abraham, approaching this divine agent and taking on the case for mercy and judgment with him. If this was a movie, we would have intense background music go up. We'd have an interior dialogue of, am I going to do this? And then this would be a big highlight in the scene of the movie. And so Judah steps up and takes the place as the leader of the family. And he says, let not your anger burn against your servants, for you are like Pharaoh himself. You have all the power. We see Judah's appeal. He says, the boy cannot leave his father. This is in verse 22. The boy cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. Then you said to your servants, unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you shall not see my face again. Here Judah is basically making the case, if we don't get Benjamin back, our father, your servant, he's going to die.
Yeah.
Well, we know that Joseph has been very interested in the well-being and state of his father. We see in verse 27, it says, then your servant, my father, said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One left me, and I said, surely he has been torn to pieces, and I have never seen him since. This is the first time the brothers explicitly bring up the fact that they're aware of their brother's potential death for Joseph. Every other time we've seen this phrase, and one is no more, right? This is like if you're guilty about something in your past and you're like, man, it doesn't matter. There was just some stuff that went on, right? It's the equivalent of that. This is like saying, no, I this is exactly what happened. This is what happened, right? This is admission.
This is not what happened.
Not what happened.
This is what Jacob perceives has happened or believes has happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for them, it's at least another step in admission, right?
Yeah.
Because now they're admitting that their brother, in their eyes, right, was not just potentially missing, but was in harm of some sort.
Right.
So we see just a greater acknowledgement that Joseph was perceived to be dead, right? That the one was not just no more, but was perceived to be dead. In verse 31, skipping down a few, it says, as soon as Jacob sees that the boy is not with us, he will die, and your servants will bang down the grazed hair upon him. So Judah's making his case of, hey, listen, if we do this, Jacob will die. If we do this, all this stuff will happen. Ultimately, to get to the point in 33 that says, now therefore, because of all these things, let me take the place.
Yeah.
Let your servant remain instead of the boy as the servant to my Lord, and let the boy go back to his brothers. For how can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? I fear to see the evil that would find my father. So.
That's, okay, let me just say this. I mean, as cool as Joseph is, Judah's displaying some pretty sacrificial attributes here. I mean, that feels very snake-crushing seed-esque,
right?
Maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
This is we don't want to talk about a redemption story. This is the same guy who, basically, didn't honor the Levirate. Levirate with his daughter-in-law. This is not a guy who's been known for sacrificial things.
Nope.
To give things away freely.
Yeah. Seems like he's been humbled, maybe.
Yeah. This is somebody who has changed so much so that he's willing to lay down his life for someone else. Mm-hmm. So he makes this cry, he makes this plea. Judah, he offers to take the place of Benjamin. This is a kind of interesting connection. He offers to take the place of Benjamin, who Benjamin had taken the place of Joseph as the favorite son. Mm-hmm. And so the brother who was responsible for selling Joseph into slavery, Judah, now freely offers himself as a slave to Joseph in order to save his father, Jacob's life.
Cool.
Things have come full circle.
Love
it's
it.
This, you mentioned this mirrored effect. the whole, all of these tests has been Jacob basically creating a circumstances very similar to what they went through in 37 to say, I want to give you the opportunity for yourself to walk through this and choose differently. The tests were not about Joseph seeing that my brothers have changed. This is me. I think the tests were more about the brothers seeing that they themselves have changed.
Oh,
And
totally.
Yeah.
For
For Judah to be allowed to act out his change and to make a choice to change in these moments. So 45, picking up in verse 1, Joseph couldn't control himself so much. He cried and he said, make everyone go away. He sent out anybody who wasn't the family members. No one stayed with him. Joseph made himself known to his brothers, and he wept aloud. Instead of weeping in private, he's weeping out loud. So much so that the Egyptians heard it and the household of Pharaoh heard it. Now, this is just an exaggeration. He intensely wept. Could mean people heard it and went and told the house of like, hey, Jacob's not okay. Or Joseph's not okay.
Yeah, totally.
It's really interesting that what caused him to kind of break character, break out of the skies, was the mention of his father's possible death. So often he's been intrigued by how's my father doing? Or how's your father doing? Maybe it's mine, who knows? This is what finally broke him. The idea that Jacob might not be okay. And so in verse 3, Joseph said, I am Joseph. Is my father alive? First question out of his mouth. But his brothers couldn't answer him. They were so in disbelief at his presence. Like, wait, what? This is, what's going on here? So Joseph said to his brothers, come here. I'll tell you all about it. And they came near. He said, I'm Joseph. I'm your brother, the one that you sold to Egypt. And then in verse 5, we get this different understanding or interpretations of the events that have happened. I would say the accurate and correct understanding of what's happened. He says, hey, don't be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. You didn't sell me. God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are 5 years in which there'll be neither plowing nor harvest. Side note, the famine's been in the land for 2 years. That's how we know Simeon was there for around 2 years.
Okay.
Verse 7, and God sent me before you to preserve you for a remnant on the earth and to keep alive for you many survivors. Do you guys hear all these like life themes, right? The purpose of sending Joseph was so that way they might live and not die. Interesting. Verse 8, so it was not you who sent me here, but God. He has made a father to Pharaoh and a lord of all his house and ruler over all the land of Egypt. So here we see Joseph has fulfilled this role of ruler, right? That the brothers said, do you wish to rule over us in 37? And he said, I'm gonna rule over you to preserve life. He interprets the events of, we last week, Stephen talked about, he said, my brothers sold me here and I was stolen from the land of Hebrews. He now interprets this and understands God's true purpose, that God sent him here. His brothers didn't steal him. The credit is now in Yahweh, and it's for the glory of Yahweh, the benefit. We now see that the man in this story, this divine agent, has been Joseph all along. He's this image-bearing partner of Yahweh, right? Solomon Shekel, he's a professor at Hebrew University, he says this. He said, how rare is the person who would be more concerned about the moral rehabilitation of an individual who has inflicted harm, degradation, or injury upon them than with vengeance against that aggressor. Joseph's righteousness, I would say his image-bearing ability, his image-bearing quality resides in this. He would rather see his enemies purified of their sinfulness than punish them for it. Guys, this is what image-bearing is. That we would reflect God to the world, right? When Jacob saw Esau's face, he says, your face looks like the face. It's as if I'm seeing the face of God. When we can come alongside with Yahweh and partner with him, we're not only able to bless those who bless us, but we're able to lead those who injure and hurt us and aggressors towards us we'd much rather want them to be rehabilitated from their sinful ways than to punish them for it.
That's amazing. That's really beautiful.
Cool. Well, we will continue on, not to go away from that point too fast, because I love it. Verse 9 says, hurry up, go to my father and say, thus says son Joseph, God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, don't tarry. Verse 10, you shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, you and your children, your children's children, and your flocks and your herds and all that you have. Here we see, hey, come here. I will make your people prosper in this land. He says, I'll provide for you in verse 11. And in verse 12, he says, now your eyes see me, and the eyes of your brothers see, that it is my mouth that speaks to you. Right? This is very much that imagery of looking at you is like looking at the face of Yahweh, right? This is someone who is bringing prosperity, gifts, provision. Joseph is really stepping into this divine agent, this covenant image-bearing role. He says, you must tell my father of all the honor. Verse 14, he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck, and he wept, and Benjamin wept, kissed all his brothers, wept upon them. After that, his brothers talked with him, right? We see this moment of beauty, reconciliation, brothers getting back together. And this next part, basically, we see that Pharaoh signs off on the deal. He says, yep, hey, this is good. Load your beasts, give them some gifts. I'm honoring this. I'm honoring this. You guys come down and hang out with us. Have no concern for your goods. In verse 20, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. Wow. This blessable image bearer of Joseph is not only blessing the whole world by being the one people are coming to get food, but he's also blessing his own family through how God has blessed him. Verse 21, we see this, that the sons of Israel, here we have this national identity, right? This is the people of God. They know themselves as the sons of Israel, that they did so. Joseph gave them wagons, and they went back to their house. We know that Benjamin was given 300 shekels and 5 changes of clothes. Quick nerd Bible fact, Joseph changed clothes 5 times in his narrative. Oh. Right? And so we here see Benjamin as the other, kind of the stand-in of Joseph, is also given 5 changes of clothes. I think it could be saying, hey, I'm going to give you basically, here's my wisdom. Here's what I experienced and where I got without you having to go through all the pits I did. I don't know. And then we get this last comment in 24 that says, do not quarrel on the way. This could mean don't throw blame as you've done before, as when Reuben said, hey, if only you would have listened to me. But it probably also means, hey, don't worry, the tests are over. There's not another reveal, like I'm done. And so they went out of Egypt, and in 26, we get this comment, then they told their father Jacob, Joseph is still alive, and he is ruler over all the land of Egypt. And Joseph's heart became numb, for he did not believe them. Man, Jacob has been through some stuff. Even when his brothers are telling him, hey, he's alive, we're doing this, he doesn't believe them. His heart's dead. But then we see in 27, it says, but when they told him all of the words of Joseph, Joseph's claimed that God sent me here, not you, which he had said to them. And when he saw the wagons, we saw proof that, man, yes, he is here and he is sending this. He is in good health, right? He's in a position of power to send all this. We see that the spirit of their father, Jacob, revived. And now no longer do we see Jacob, but we see, and Israel said, it is enough.
Yeah. Joseph,
my son, is still alive, and I will go see him before I die. When we hear the words of Joseph, when Jacob hears the words of Joseph, his ruach, or his spirit, came alive. And this is a key theme that we see throughout the Pentateuch, throughout the biblical text. It's this response of God's people to God's work, right? When we see the faithfulness of God before us, the wagons full, the words of the Lord, our hearts and our spirits, they come alive when we see God's faithfulness. I think what's really cool is not only did Joseph provide physical life, right? Not only was Joseph's place as someone to facilitate physical life that they might not die, but we see right here that his actions and him as a blessable image bearer helped revive, bring back to life the soul and the spirit of Jacob. And so, man, I think through, just on a side note, I think through how many people I know that could just need their soul revived by a blessable image bearer of God, right? We don't see Yahweh speak during this whole text, but we do see Yahweh move. We do see Yahweh's power and faithfulness throughout all of this.
Absolutely.
Think about what an opportunity we have. I want to leave this with basically saying that Joseph was this blessable image bearer of God, right? Joseph provided this life, and we're going to see one that's greater than Joseph coming. Right? We're going to see one who, instead of just providing bread for all of the world, who, like in John 6:35 says, he who comes to me shall not be hungry, right? Not just the bread for the famine, but the bread for life.
Yeah.
Not just spiritual revival, but spiritual life for those who never had it. And so we see here just a glimpse of what's to come. We don't know if we have our serpent crushing seed yet. We don't know where that's going. But I think we leave on a high note. I think we leave with some hope in our heart. We leave with a revived soul and heart of Jacob, and excited to see what happens next.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Caleb.
Yeah,
Do you want to pray for us as we end tonight?
I would love to. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Lord, we love you. Gosh, thank you so much for just letting us come to your text, study it, read it, but let it read us. Let it call us to repentance and ask questions of how are we being faithful covenant partners? God, how are we interpreting the things in our life? How are we understanding what you're doing, God? Humble us, speak to us, use us. Lord, I want to pray that you use us this week to be blessable, covenant, image-bearing partners with you. Lord, we love you. We love you. We love you. Let us always remember your faithfulness. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.
Amen.